is a far-off galaxy, somewhere that you want to be. Magic caravan, won't you take me there? Magic caravan, won't you take me there?
Okay, welcome back. Welcome back to Coast Live. We're going to be getting into Quest of the Giant J tonight with author Ben Miller, a direct descendant of Jesse Woodson James, the Outlaw. And apparently, Jesse Woodson James was actually the colonel of the KGC, which is revealed in Mr. Miller's book, Quest of the Giant J. And the book, the cover of the book, it's up on my screen now, is the cover is actually the plat map of the property, which is in the shape of a giant J. And it's a gold mine worth billions. And in the estate of the giant J, Mr. Miller reveals that the property was basically involved in building the Federal Reserve. And the original owner, Mr. Colonel Jackson, was actually a grandson to Colonel Jesse Woodson James. And it reveals that for the first time that Jesse Woodson James did, in fact, fake his death in 1882. And his grandson, basically, or grandchildren, I should say, were involved in assisting him to build the Federal Reserve, which became the largest bank in the world. And so one interesting thing, on top of the responsibility of the Confederate Treasury, apparently, Jesse James was also tasked with protecting the Confederate treasure, obviously adding to the Confederate treasure. Between 1861 and 1882, he robbed more trains and banks than anybody in history, or at least is credited with so far doing so. And then, apparently faked his death in 1882. And people have speculated, where did he go and what did he do with his vast amounts of treasure that he had accumulated? You know, was it something that he used for his own greedy means? Lots of parties or giant houses? I mean, what do you do with all that? So apparently it is revealed in the book for the first time that Colonel Jesse Woodson James, the Outlaw, was actually a lot more than just an outlaw. He was obviously an operative for the KGC, which was a secret spy division of the Confederate Army, a legitimate spy division, and that has been confirmed. A lot of people have speculated, well, is that even a real thing? And yes, it is documented that the KGC was a legitimate branch of the Confederate Army, and their spy network was vast and quite large, and larger, 200,000 blood oath members, larger than the CIA, FBI, and the NSA combined. So they were easily the most powerful spy network to ever operate on U.S. soil. And they apparently had collected a massive amount of wealth and treasure over the years and accumulated massive amounts on top of the Confederate treasure. And then the book goes into basically goes into detail and connects the Templar treasure to the Confederate treasure. And apparently that did exist in the United States and in the South. It existed during when the Civil War first began in 1861. The Templar treasure existed in the South, and so therefore became, I guess, tasked as another responsibility for Colonel Jesse Woodson James to protect the Templar treasure along with the Confederate treasure, and then also add to the vast amounts of treasure over the 21-year period until 1882, when he faked his death. And then apparently in the new evidence and new information that's revealed for the first time in Quest of the Giant Jay by author Ben Miller. His fourth great grandfather, Jesse Woodson James, assisted his second great grandfather, Colonel Jackson, in building the Federal Reserve. And Colonel Jackson is documented as a cousin to General Stonewall and President General Andrew Jackson. And apparently the Jacksons had a party in the tunnel system that was covertly dug under Chicago. After, in the early 1900s, they had a party down there to celebrate the finishing of such a massive project that they apparently moved 33 miles of debris out the back door of his uncle's bar on Madison Street, and then at nighttime. So nobody even knew they were there. And then they eventually basically applied for a permit that was going on for a contract, I guess they applied for a contract to win a contract to build a telephone wire system and run telephone wires under the city, which is what they wanted to do. And they determined that they were going to have to run it underground. And when they did that, the chief engineer, George W. Jackson, apparently won the contract because the tunnels were already there. And at that time is about the time when they alerted the city that, hey, yeah, we kind of already built the tunnel system underneath the city. So, and then going on further, the tunnels are documented again as they were patented, at least the process was patented, and then picked up again later in the 1920s by England. And the London people, whoever ran the government there in London, wanted to connect all the post offices underground. So they ended up coming here to Chicago, to the United States, and visiting Chicago and looking at their massive tunnel system, and copied the exact same system there, which was a process that was patented by Chief Engineer George W. Jackson. So some of the tunnel system information had been known, obviously, and had been documented. One thing that they did not really document was the connection between the Giant J, the vast amounts of gold, as well as to Jesse James. And so the book reveals just an incredible, amazing story of how Jesse Woodson James was obviously misidentified, or I guess you could say mislabeled, as an outlaw, and he was actually apparently just doing his job. And to the South, he was always kind of considered a hero to the South because he was known for fighting for farmers that were being overran for their land by the railroads. He was also known for obviously going head to head with the bankers, the banksters, and taking them down as well. And so there obviously was a lot of political operativeness going on there behind the scenes that we maybe sort of knew but didn't really realize the extent of it. And so the political operative of Jesse Woodson James, being the field commander for the KGC as well as the comptroller for the Confederate Treasury Department, goes into detail in this book on how he would have to pay his soldiers in the field, sentinels that would be watching treasure depositories that the KGC had constructed, and he would have to pay the sentinels somehow. So he devised an elaborate grid system where he would bury usually gold coins or silver coins in the mason jars, basically. Mason jars were used, and they would be associated with some type of marker in the forest or somewhere nearby where the sentinels were. And they would have basically be left a map, or be given a map, or given a location to go look. And they would have to find the symbols that were hidden in the wilderness to help them find where their payroll was. So they would have to dig up their payroll by basically using this grid system, this KGC grid system that was devised of symbols, carved into rocks and trees in the wilderness or various locations where the depositories were built. So this is all very elaborate, and I do have to say that it's been speculated for decades that the KGC had acquired massive amounts of wealth and hidden this wealth in various locations in potential depositories. And after reading Quest of the Giant Jay, it's quite apparent that this is the case. And not only that, Mr. Miller apparently reveals for the first time here that there were actually two Jessies that were cousins and two Franks. So each Jesse had an older brother named Frank, and they were all cousins in the KGC, basically comrades in arms. And Jesse Woodson James was actually 27 years older than Jesse Robert James from Clay County, Missouri. And that name, Jesse Robert James, never surfaced in 1882 when they faked his death. And so when they faked the colonel's death in 1882, they never went back and looked at the 1850 census. But the fact is, there's been two sets of photos of both individuals that have been documented all as one guy, as all being one person, Jesse James. And so here you can see on the screen, we've got Jesse Woodson James on the right and Jesse Robert James on the left. And Jesse Robert James was born in 1847, was 4 years old on the 1850 census, and it does say Jesse R. James. We verified that, which is also in the book. And then Jesse Woodson James, the colonel, was actually from Tennessee. And so that information is verified in the book with the census information. It does say J.W. James in 1850 as 30 years old, and he's listed as a saddler on the census, which is pretty interesting because Jesse Woodson James, had definitely been recognized in the past or detail noted in various locations as being on a horse with a spectacular silver saddle, some type of handmade, amazing, spectacular silver saddle that had been documented of him being in southern Illinois at some point during the war, as well as other places. And so the legend continued on into well past the end of the supposed end of the Civil War in 1865. Obviously Jesse Woodson James was not done in 1865. He continued fighting the war for decades. And so that was known, but obviously the extent of his plan and his collaboration with the Confederate underground was known to obviously people that knew, but other people outside the inner circle would just have to speculate. Here's a picture of him in the left picture, which is the Nashville picture from during the war, was authenticated as being Frank and Jesse James, and actually is Benjamin Franklin James in the chair, Sergeant Benjamin Franklin James, and then his younger brother Jesse Woodson James, and then there's Fletch Taylor in that picture as well on the left from Wisconsin, who was a Confederate as well. And you can see Jesse's wearing the same jacket in both photos. The photo on the right is the Pence collection photo, which had been speculated for many decades that was Jesse Woodson James. And sure enough, you can tell he's wearing the same jacket as in the authenticated photo, and it does look like the same guy. One thing that is also pointed out here in this photo here is that this photo shows the James brothers from Missouri holding up the KGC symbol representing the KGC. And you can see that Jesse Woodson James and Jesse Robert James are definitely not the same height. Clearly, Jesse Woodson James is taller, over 6 feet tall. And it's noted in the book that most of the robberies were noted as somebody being over 6 feet tall. So not that Jesse Woodson James, being colonel of the KGC, was really the guy who individually robbed every single bank. I don't think that is the case. I think after looking at the material that's been presented, he was actually the colonel, the field commander, and had groups probably throughout the country, because he had been credited with robbing banks at the same time in different states on the same day. So I don't think that was actually something that really happened, other than the fact of he was maybe commanding, the two simultaneous robberies from a distance, from maybe, from some field commander office, or maybe he was involved in one of them. But at the same time, there's no way he simultaneously did that himself. He's not Superman. But a man who controls an army is possibly just as good as Superman. So there's that. And this picture here is the James brothers from Tennessee getting a portrait done. And I believe the year on that is 1871. And so Benjamin Franklin James from Tennessee, who was a sergeant during the war for the Confederates, his home was actually at the 814, I think it was, Fatherland Drive in Nashville, Tennessee, which is the old Opry House, the old Opry Theater. And so Benjamin Franklin James from Tennessee actually lived at the Grand Old Opry Theater. And so during the war, which was also the Confederate Secret Service headquarters, as well as the headquarters for the KGC, and Jesse Woodson James rose to become the colonel of the KGC. And so it's been rumored that Frank wanted to kind of chill out after the war, and Jesse wanted to keep going. And so maybe that's why Jesse became the colonel, and Frank did whatever he did, which was probably lay low. This picture here shows the guy in the coffin, and obviously they've had a couple shows on that, and it's not either one of the Jessies. It doesn't look like the guy from Missouri or Jesse Woodson James from Tennessee. So they speculate that it was a guy named Charlie Bigelow who was using the name Jesse James, going around saying he was Jesse James, or it was a guy or a cousin, I guess, that a James cousin that passed away that they tried to use and spin off as being Jesse. Here are the two pictures from the Pence collection in Kentucky. It is true. We did verify that the James brothers did have family in Kentucky, just across the Tennessee line in Kentucky, actually, from where they lived in Tennessee. And the Missouri James boys also had relatives in Kentucky. It's the same family. There were a lot of cousins. There was one family that had 11 kids, or 13 kids or 14 kids or something. So it was a lot of cousins, and I think it was 11. I'm not mistaken from what I remember in the book, and as well as what my conversation with Mr. Miller earlier was confirmed, that there were certainly Kentucky relatives, because the Pence collection photos also, as well as the photos for Frank, they've all kind of ended up just being, both Franks, Alexander Franklin James from Missouri and Benjamin Franklin James from Tennessee, all ended up being one guy over history. All the photos just kind of got lumped into saying that they're Frank. Well, there were two Franks and there were two Jessies, and so that photo mix-up was something that, transpired over years. And obviously here's Jesse Woodson James in that photo was just referenced from the movie, The Assassination of Jesse James, and then this is the video actually that is online on the YouTube channel for our channel, Coast to Coast Live, as well as I believe it's on Mr. Miller's channel, Magic Caravan, which is his YouTube channel, his musician page. So that's pretty much it. Here's a photo. We'll show you. This one is an authentic Jesse James map that is documented in Mr. Miller's book Quest of the Giant Jay, as well as Shadow of the Sentinel by Bob Brewer and Warren Getler. And then the photo on the right is the schematics map for the underground tunnel system underneath Chicago that they covertly dug. And which is basically the Gold Coast of Chicago, by the way. The KGC literally built the Gold Coast of Chicago. And it's all documented. You just need to know where to look. And so the photo in the middle is actually Jesse Woodson James. On the left is an old man, about 75, 80 years old. And on the right, he's probably about 50 years old. And so you can see that it's the same guy. He's got the same beard, goatee, roughly in the same area. You can see where his chin is. His mouth is the same. His nose is the same. The eyes are starting to get a little drippy, but you can tell it's the same eyes. And his receding hairline. You can tell that he was probably going to go bald or was going to go bald eventually. And in the older picture, you can tell that he probably did go bald, maybe had some hair. It's hard to tell with the hat on. But either way, he didn't have a lot of hair and definitely a receding hairline. So that's that. So, and that photo is actually in the book, and it is from the Giant J photo that is in the book as well, which is right here. We will show you as well the fort photo of the Giant J, which was a fort called Fort Lookout, built on a mountain in the Black Hills of South Dakota, which is on the Giant J. And so one thing that reveals on the fact that Mr. Miller has revealed all this information, on top of that, he's about ready to dump a massive unloading of gold on you as well. A lost story about lost gold mines all over the United States, all over the western United States. These mineral patents, which were issued to, our great-great-grandparents' era, so going back, or great-grandparents, depending on how old you are, they were issued in the form of mineral patents. And mineral patents apparently have federal laws in them that make them federal jurisdiction. And this is something that has been forgotten or overlooked. And Mr. Miller accidentally discovered a gold mine in his family that had been forgotten about because they weren't even really aware that it was in the shape of a Giant J until he ordered the plat map of the property. All he had were the pictures, and it took him a good amount of time, 2 years, to find the actual property. And finally, after finding the property, he ordered the patent and he ordered the actual map of the property. And sure enough, it came back as a Giant J. And he was told by his grandma that she was told that they were related to President General Andrew Jackson. So there was possibility the entire time that, it was going to be something significant if he ever could find it. And because the picture certainly referenced a large building and definitely looked like a large operation of some kind, and he knew it was a gold mining business. So therefore, he knew that. But what he didn't realize is that the federal laws and the patents that make them federal jurisdiction had been overlooked by the county. And the county, when he first inherited this estate, had given him problems because they had sold the property illegally, apparently, after assessing property taxes that it should never have been assessed. And so the chief of title matters of the United States got involved and confirmed that these laws in the patent were actual federal laws that made it federal jurisdiction. One thing that they also confirmed is that the counties, wherever these mineral patents were issued, get this, actually started second fake chains of title on every single one of them. So basically, Mr. Miller uncovered more lost wealth in the form of mineral patents than anybody in history, because these mineral patents collectively are worth trillions of dollars, worth a T, with a giant T, trillions. So it is true that connected to Jesse James, the hidden wealth of the KGC was massive, and it accumulated on top of actual treasure and jewels and gold bullion and all kinds of just lost wealth, or collected accumulated wealth. They had basically acquired all these mineral patents as well, and it's some of them are obviously not related to the KGC, but certain specific mineral patents are that were definitely connected to KGC operations. And so between 1840 and 1910, that's the gold rush. And the Knights of the Golden Circle was active probably within 20 years of the original gold rush starting. So they started networking and building the network prior to the war, and basically out of necessity became a spy network. They originally had some other intentions, but that had changed and basically was forced into becoming a spy network as the war started. So what we're telling you here tonight on Coast to Coast Live is that there are trillions of just absolutely unbelievable. I mean, this is just mind-blowing that any one of us could have an ancestor that settled a gold mine on a mountain somewhere, and because of the federal laws in it, under federal law, it goes to next of kin if that guy didn't leave a will. And if it was never sold, it's still sitting there in the middle of nowhere on a mountain, waiting for his next of kin to come by, who are the living next of kin today, because all his closest next of kin when he was alive back then are dead, have passed away by now. So whoever's the living next of kin today is the real owner. And that right there is lost wealth. I mean, some of these estates could be worth millions, billions of dollars. Collectively, they're definitely all worth trillions. And this story is just absolutely mind-blowing. So we're going to go ahead and take a break here and let you guys absorb that. It's just, it's unreal.
To hide, trying to find themselves, or maybe someone else. Tomorrow on the street, we'll be back burning in the heat.
Which way did you go again? Yeah, which way did my money Mustang ran? Hey, my Mustang. Yeah, she's somewhere down on that range. Coming round the corner bend on another Apache raid. Yeah, I've got to find my way back to down in El Paso way. I guess there's no other way. Navajo riders, Navajo riders, on an Apache raid. Yeah, I got to meet Cherokee Joe down on the other side of the Rio Grande.
All right. Welcome back to Coast Live. That's Joker's Hand by Ben Miller, the author of Quest of the Giant J, a descendant of Jesse Woodson James. And before that, we played the Dead Heavies as we faded out of the last into our first break there. So I think we've covered pretty much most of what we wanted to get into here tonight. And thank you for tuning in, and definitely go out and get yourself a copy of Quest of the Giant J. I would suggest maybe doing some genealogy research, because this story is just absolutely unbelievable. I mean, you know, it's not enough to rewrite history on Jesse James, but to also unleash a gold rush on us, a lost gold mine gold rush on us is pretty unbelievable, you know. So apparently there are thousands of these mineral patents out there in the wilderness, the vast wilderness, still sitting there where our ancestors left them, because in a lot of cases there was just no one to sell them to, for one. And even if your ancestors knew where they were, you know, the guy left it to his brother or something, and you know, his brother in New Jersey knew about it, he probably wasn't going to get on a train and go out into the middle of the wilderness and so he could work his other brother's claim, you know, and possibly get eaten by a grizzly bear as well, you know, or scalped by Indians. Because you know, back then the frontier was definitely very hostile. So there were wild Indians, there was wild animals, obviously wild grizzly bears, and a lot of it was very risky. So I think that's another reason why they put these federal laws into the mineral patents, to make sure that nobody could steal them, to protect the people's investments. And it appears that most of them were far off the beaten path, off the grid. I mean, we say off the grid now, but back then this was before cars existed. So you were really off the grid. There was no coming back from you know, a 20-mile walk into the vast wilderness. There's no coming back from that quick, other than a really fast horse, which Jesse James was known to have a really fast horse. So with that and further ado, we're going to get back into some music here. We've got our Magic Caravan to Midnight playlist that we're going to play here soon. So thanks for tuning in, and you know, we'll be in touch as far as this story goes. We will update you as it progresses, because I think there's definitely going to be a lot more to it. They're talking about potential TV show as well as a movie or movies. So that all sounds pretty awesome. You guys have a good night. Thanks for tuning in to Coast Live. we're going to go ahead and fade out right here with Strumming with the King by author Ben Miller. Thanks for tuning in to Coast Live.
Since I heard this before.